The emotion can either be anger, confidence, discipline, fear, or greed. Those are the 5 that we are touching on. Now, for every single one of those, we have different profiles. If you are not sure if it's anger, if you're not sure if it's confidence, discipline, fear, or greed, then just do what you think is the closest one, and eventually it will still fix the obstacle that we are dealing with. So no worries about that. We don't need to be as detailed right there. If we don't really know what it is at that moment in time, perfect. We can discover it through filling in one of the profiles. So right here, we have the anger profile or the tilt profile. Tilt and anger, basically the same. When you go on a tilt, you start revenge trading, over trading, you start getting angry, etc. So what do we want to do here? With our emotion that we have established through our data collection worksheet, so through our journaling, etc., we want to fill in the first sign you've become angry. Now, that can also be first sign for confidence, discipline, fear, greed obstacles, right? First sign you have become angry. What is the first sign? Well, we could, the most obvious sign when someone is angry, they start cursing. They start saying bad words, for example. So in that sense, you can say, all right, maybe that is my first sign. But once you fill it in more and more and more, you will start to notice even earlier signs. And that is what I meant with the cycle. Because the cycle is not, I'm cursing right now, so I must be angry. No, something beforehand already happened potentially. So corrective actions. What is an action that we do want to take when we do get angry? We want to step away. We want to go away from charts. We want to close our computer, etc. We want to maybe go out for a walk, meditate, whatever helps you. So we want to at least be out of the charts. When we are angry, when we are having obstacles, we are noticing obstacles, we don't want to do anything. We want to get away from the chart. That is very important. Now, the injecting logic is also something we will touch on tomorrow. But injecting logic is, for example, in this case, it could be, well, when I am angry, and what is a logical solution to the angriness? What is from a logical standpoint? Is, all right, I'm angry, so I don't see the market the same anymore. Remember the boiling water. When water is boiling, you can't see the reflection clearly. So we want to wait until the water's very calm again, right? So we don't see the market clearly. We perceive it different. Maybe I'll do something that I don't mean to do when I'm angry, etc. That is our logic. Then right here, we have our anger level and technical changes. So here we have anger level and technical changes right there. Now, anger level is describe the thoughts, emotions, things you say, behaviors, and actions that highlight each level of anger. Complete at least 3 levels. So in the beginning, again, this is an ongoing process. So in the beginning, like it says here, add more as you learn more. In the beginning, it will be difficult to recognize it because we don't have a lot to work with. We were just paying attention to it. And when we pay attention to it more and more and more over time, we will have a lot of cycles to work with and we will recognize it. We will have self-control. So we also have the technical changes. Describe the quality of your decision making, perception of the market, opportunities or current positions at each level of anger. So number 1 is the first thing that you notice. Now I would advise to start somewhere at number 3 and then eventually you can rearrange them because number 1 that you fill in right now is probably not your actual number 1, right? Because now we are trying to discover a cycle. We are trying to discover, all right, what leads us to number 10, which is the end. The end is, again, maybe having a headache when you're angry, etc. This is the anger level. So this is your emotional level. The technical changes is potentially number 10. I've blown an account. I went full margin and got a margin call, for example. So that is what we are looking at right there. So right here, the first one could be, for example, a very small sign, as in I am tapping my feet on the ground, which I normally don't do. All right, interesting. And then we slowly start to develop more signs of that cycle. So the second one eventually could be something like, all right, I'm slowly getting a headache. I'm very tensed up. All right, interesting. And then eventually it gets worse and worse and worse or worse until you're at your angry level and you start tilting and you lose control, etc. So we want to find out what is the first sign of that. What is the first sign? Then on the technical side, describe the quality of your decision-making, perception of the market opportunities or current positions at each level of anger. So the first one could be technical changes. It could be something like, all right, I missed something, so I'm doing small revenge trades. I'm doing small over trading, not that crazy just yet, but then eventually with every step that passes, you get worse and worse and worse, and eventually you blow that account. So which steps are you taking to lead you to that 10, to lead you to the end? Again, the first one being the first thing that you notice. The first thing that you notice in your technical changes that could be a sign of your angriness, that could be a sign of anger. Again, you would do the same for confidence, discipline, fear, and greed. Then, anger triggers. List all the things that trigger anger and provide details for each. Maybe it could just be, I did my filtering process and I saw one pair did give a nice setup, and the pair I was actually trading didn't give a nice setup and didn't play out, etc. So you get sort of angry, you get frustrated. Or it could be, all right, I took a loss. Very simple, just a loss could be an anger trigger for you. And those are all kinds of triggers that, again, we want to make very clear, because then we can recognize the triggers. When we can recognize the triggers and we can recognize the cycle, we have self-control. And the only thing we then need to do is we need to interrupt the cycle. Again, I say that the only thing we need to do, like it's easy. Of course, it's not easy. It's not easy, but it will become easier over time because you will recognize the cycles and you will have self-control over more over time. So again, the thing that I want you to focus on is that I want you to fill in the profiles right here. And what I want you to focus on as well and keep in mind is that the first time that you recognize a cycle, you might still mess up. You might still overtrade. Perfect. As long as we learn from the experience, that is important. This is not, the whole psychology week is not something to prevent you from doing it. Yes, of course, over time. But in order to recognize the cycles, a cycle needs to happen actually. And then we can learn from it, and then we can change something, etc. And then it won't happen again. That is very important. So mess up, essentially. Mess up once in a while, but then learn from it. That is important. You don't need to be scared that you are going to mess up, because you will likely mess up. I will likely mess up 100%, as long as we learn from it. That is important. So then the last one is history of anger. Put your anger in context with your past. So that can be in trading, can be on a very personal level, etc. Have you always been an angry person or whatever? Have you always had a very thin line between crossing that angriness in you, so where you do get triggered, where you do start to tilt, etc. That is what I want you to think of, etc. Just to get a clearer idea. Again, you don't need to share that. You can keep that to yourself, because that is, of course, a very personal part as well. So this is what I want you to go over. Once we have then we have a cycle to work with. And that is beautiful, because when we have a cycle to work with, what then remains is injecting logic. When we can inject logic during a cycle, so for example, after we notice the first one and we inject logic, then we control our emotions. And when we do that often, very often, more and more and more and more, the emotion will not come up anymore. Why? Because that injecting logic has become a habit. When you notice the first sign, I am now tapping my feet on the ground, which I normally don't do. I inject logic. I'm getting angry. I need to be aware. You stop the cycle. You stop the cycle of happening from potentially overtrading, revenge trading, and it gets worse. You blow that account, etc. Full margin, etc., etc. It gets worse and worse and worse. So you stop that cycle, which is exactly what we want to do. And when that becomes a habit, that stopping that cycle, the emotions won't come up anymore. So you won't have the anger anymore. Why not? Because it became a habit for you to stop the cycle. So then you can truly trade without anything on your mind, or with full control. Let's call it that way. Because you might still here and there get a little bit of angriness or a little bit of anger, but you have full control over it. And that is very important. So this is what I want you to do. Focus on the profiles for anger, confidence, discipline, fear, and greed. Focus on what you have collected through your data collection worksheet. Perfect. Thank you. Yes, perfect. So we have